Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to wait for participants to be logging in here. Just a minute or two. All right, welcome, welcome everyone. We will get started, I think, in about 1 minute. We've still got some participants entering the webinar. Okay. I think it is time we got started. Welcome everyone to the ESSER Data Collection FY22 Annual Report webinar. My name is Matt Denninger. I'm the Chief Strategy and Research Officer here at DESE. And I am joined by two tremendous colleagues who have been helping on this data collection journey, helping prepare this webinar and prepare all the forms. That is Desi Karova and Michelle Thomas. They are panelists here with me. And they're going to be helping out with this webinar and helping out with the Q&A towards the end. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping items. These slides will be provided next week to all registrants. We may even send them to a few more email addresses for those who weren't able to register because all districts need to be doing this. To preserve bandwidth, your video and microphone are turned off. We're doing this webinar style, so please, as in the past, we really like the Q&A feature. It allows us to organize the questions and answers. Try to refrain from using the chat feature. Please use the Q&A. Okay, we should get started. I'm going to talk a little bit about where we've been, just remind folks of sort of the context of this data collection and where we are now, moving into the third year of ESSER data collection. I will do a walkthrough of the collection tools for you. And then, as I said, we'll do Q&A at the end. Okay, so where have we been? So in July of 2021, districts submitted data on ESSER1 spending, and it was really for the first 6 months of the pandemic. If you remember when you did this, the feds, because the pandemic started that spring, they were on the federal fiscal year and decided to do data collection starting the day the pandemic started, or the national emergency was called, and ending on September 30th of 2020, the end of that federal fiscal year. There weren't that many questions. It was about 11 pages of questions, and of course we got 100% participation from the districts. And so one of the issues with that was the whole federal fiscal year issue, right? We're very much used to doing all of our accounting on the state fiscal year that ends June 30th. So last year, in May, districts submitted on ESSER1 and ESSER2 spending, and that activity period was from October 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 2021. So they basically said, okay, we'll start with the beginning of the next federal fiscal year, but we'll get you back on the state fiscal year schedule. So we're only collecting to June 30th of 2021. Again, we had 100% participation from districts. Luckily, it was only 14 pages of questions. The feds had put out a 39-page survey, and we pushed back pretty hard against that. And got it down to 14. The feds are looking to resurrect that long survey for next year. We will keep you posted as to where that ends up. But for this year, it is very similar to last year. So here we are moving into year 3. As you can see here, we've got ESSER1. This is basically the 3rd year of ESSER1 reporting. This is our 2nd year of ESSER2 reporting, and because of when SR3 came out, or ARP-ESSER came out, this is actually our 1st year of SR3 reporting, all for FY22. So as I said, the performance reporting period for this collection will be all the activities administered from July 1st of 2021 to June 30th of 2022, fiscal year 22. So you have to sort of, again, put your brain back to last school year, last fiscal year, and that's where we're reporting on. This data collection window is moved up from last year. Last year was a little bit later in the school year. It was May. This year, the feds moved it up to be March 20th. Through April 14th. So they moved up the goalposts a little bit on us. And so you'll have about 4 weeks to submit this year. As I said, this year's survey forms, thankfully, are nearly identical to last year's forms, which is great. As I said, this 39-page one, they're saying perhaps for next year, again, we will keep you posted on that. But for this year, it's very, very, very similar to last year's data collection. So for those of you who did it last year, this is going to look pretty familiar to you. Okay. One of the things that comes with a lot of money is that in addition to the main allocations that districts get, what are called the feds call the mandatory allocations. Those are the main ESSER1 grant, the main ESSER2 grant, and the main ESSER3 grant. DESE gets 10% of each of those awards and often breaks them up into smaller grants that go back out to districts. So because it's all ESSER funding, we do also have to collect data on those smaller grants that we created out of the ESSER1, ESSER2, and ESSER3 funds. There weren't a lot of ESSER1 funds, new grants. So if you got the 432 or the 436, you will also have to report on those. Luckily, these smaller grants, the surveys are much shorter. We're not asking for, or the feds are not asking for very much information on those, just some real basic spending figures on those. They ask for a little bit more detail on the main grants. So this is what it looks like for ESSER1. ESSER2 is a lot. Again, not all districts got all of these smaller grants. There are a couple of districts that got a few of them. Everyone got the Fund Code 115, that main allocation. So, if you spent ESSER $2 last fiscal year, you're going to have to do this survey. And if you got any of these smaller fund codes, you'll have to do those. But again, the smaller fund codes, those surveys are a lot less onerous. They don't ask for a ton of information on those. And then there were some SR3 grants from last year. Obviously, the 119, which was the main allocation to districts, and there were a couple of after school and out of school time rebound grants, the 409 and the 410, that were carved out of our SR3 allocation. So there will be a number of surveys, I think, that districts will have to collect or submit and provide this year. But again, because it looks very similar to what we did last year, and these smaller grants are not asking for a ton of information, I think I'm confident this is all doable this year. There are a couple more surveys that we do need to do. One, if you recall, SR3 requires what was called maintenance of equity. It has this maintenance of equity provision. It basically says, among other things, that all districts need to, quote unquote, maintain equity for their highest poverty schools, basically the highest quartile poverty schools within your district. And they do this by measuring that there is no reduction in combined state or local per pupil funding compared to all the other schools in your district. They also look at whether or not there's any kind of reduction in the number of FTE staff per pupil compared to all the other schools in your district. We ran the numbers using EPIMS and all the finance data, and there are actually 71 districts in Massachusetts that did not meet this for their school. However, I have good news. The federal government is allowing districts to submit waivers to be exempt from this requirement. The reason is they're saying that, well, enrollment fluctuations can create huge disparities in anything measured by per pupil, whether it's per pupil spending or staff per pupil. And so if the district overall did not have a reduction in state and local per pupil funding, then we'll grant those schools exemptions from the maintenance of equity. Because of the Student Opportunity Act, because of other things related to Chapter 70, we actually have all of our districts spending more per pupil year over year. Therefore, all 71 districts that didn't meet this are eligible for this waiver, eligible for this exemption. We're just collecting it as part of this data collection. It is just one form that a district will have to fill out and sign and submit through this data collection survey. And that'll be done with it. So I think that's all I have to say for this maintenance of equity survey. And there's one more survey that we have to do. The Cross-Act survey. These questions were actually embedded last year in the surveys we did last year. They were a little confusing because you had to sort of switch your brain from like, oh, I'm reporting on ESSER 1, I'm just reporting on ESSER 1 to, okay, now take a look across all your ESSER funds. What kinds of activities did you do? And so it caused some confusion last year, and the feds collect it separately. So we're going to do it as a separate survey. It is, this should also be a fairly easy one to do. All of the questions in this one are programmatic in nature. And as I said, they're applicable to all ESSER grants. That's why this is called the Cross Act. It's across all of those acts. And so it's basically, did you use any ESSER funds on the following? Checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. All right, so you'll have the ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3 surveys, the maintenance of equity survey, if it applies to you. And we'll let all of those know who that applies to, and the cross-act surveys. As a district, please coordinate with one another as to who is submitting. We will be using as we did last year, the Alchemer platform. We've been testing it this year. The testing is going very well. Thanks to Michelle and DESE for doing that. But please coordinate with one another at the district level as to who is submitting. We did have a situation or two last year where we got multiple submissions from the same district. Don't want that to happen. So please coordinate with one another. That said, multiple people in the district can use the links and the passwords. Like last year, the passwords to access the data collection forms are your 4-digit district codes. Surveys can be completed in order. They have to be completed in order. Multiple people can be in there, and they can click around and submit or at least fill them out. But you can't skip around. You can't go do questions 11 through 15 and then go back to 1 through 10. It's got to be sequential and in order. Just a quick reminder that we're talking about, charges and expenditures. They can be reported on a cash or accrual basis, whatever form of accounting you use. Please use the method you used last year. Most districts use accrual. I don't think I have to say much more about that. Okay, where do you start? So obviously it's a lot to keep track of. The first place to look is the survey summary spreadsheet that I will show you right now, and that will be finalized and sent out to everyone early next week. Our goal is to get everything out on the 20th when everything opens. So I'm going to stop sharing on the PowerPoint presentation right now, and I will share with you the summary spreadsheet. Now, the summary spreadsheet is going to look like this. You will see the DESE org code for your district name, and then you are going to see all of the grants made out of ESSER 1, 2, or $3 to the right. Okay. It will say, if it says 113, so if we're Agawam, okay, if it says 113, that means that you need to fill out the 113. All right. If you're a Acushnet, we have that you already spent 100% and you reported on that in reporting period 1. So you no longer have to do the ESSER 1, but you have to do the ESSER 2 and the ESSER 3 if you spent funds in FY22. That's a big if. If you didn't, let us know, and then you don't have to take the survey. All right. So that's how this is going to work. And you can see, so if I'm Agawam, I'm looking across, it didn't look like I got a lot of these smaller grants, but if I'm a Acushnet, I have the 121 and I have to do the 125. Also on here, everyone has to do the Cross Act. And we also have a form for, or at least a column for that maintenance of equity, MO equity. And we've denoted which districts need to fill out that survey. These will all be hyperlinked. So all you'll need to do is click on it and it'll take you right to that survey, and you type in your 4-digit district code and you're off and running. That so this really is the best place to start and kind of the only place to start, right? This is what keeps us organized and will keep you all organized, so you know, okay, these are the ones I got to do. These are the ones that I don't have to do. For ESSER 1 and ESSER 2, we are going to, it doesn't show up here right now because we've got a few more things to add in here. We are going to add in how much money is quote unquote left, that is left unreported to the feds. All right. So, you know, there's been, for ESSER 1, there's been 2 different reporting periods. The feds have a certain number that has been reported on, and we will share with you the remainder of what needs to be reported on. Obviously with ESSER 1, there is next year, you know, because there was a year 3 for ESSER 1, you know, the July 1st through September 30th. There could be spending in the beginning of FY23. We're only looking at FY22 here. So we'll give you, when we give you the remainder, we'll give you the maximum of what you need to report on it. You could report on less than that because there is going to be one more year after this one of ESSER 1 reporting. Again, same thing for ESSER 2. We'll give you the remainder of what the feds don't yet have reported on, and that'll be sort of the maximum of what you need to report on. There's also a README here, just with some instructions and an introduction, and we'll also have more links to all the fund codes, and we'll also have extra links to the survey links over here as well. Just so that, you know, if you forgot what the 101 was as opposed to the 120, you can click on it and say, oh yeah, that's this one that I got. All right, so again, this will be sent to you next week, but this is absolutely the best place to start. I'm going to stop share there. Okay, we're at about 1:25, so that is good timing. I am going to start a walkthrough of some of these surveys. All right, so I'm going to start out with the SR3 survey because it's a little bit different from last year. Well, we didn't have SR3 last year. We didn't collect SR3 last year because it started in FY22. So we've got a dummy password here. So I'm gonna log in as testing 8. I'm gonna type my name and my email address. I am going to say I am not the lead for a consortium. Some districts did apply for SR3 Fund Code 119 as a consortium. If you are a lead consortium, please click yes and let us know what districts you are reporting for. Most districts select no for this. And then I go to next. Okay. Now, the way these are set up, it's usually, okay, so number 3 here, total amount expended to address physical health and safety. The way the feds do this is they do it in these sort of broad categories, and then they get into the more functional spending categories within that broad theme, okay? So question number 3 here, broad theme of addressing physical health and safety. And then it asks for personnel services, benefits, professional and technical services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all these spending categories. And then, we want the total to add up at the end. Try to make sure that it does add up to the end. We had a few last year that didn't. But you'll see we've got most of if you look at the ESSER1 and ESSER2 reports, it's just one column. Because SR3 has the 20% set aside for learning loss, the feds want the learning loss broken out from the non-learning loss. All right, so it's this first column will be, okay, under addressing physical health and safety, was there anything that was in that 20% set aside? And then on this column, it'll be the other 80%, if you will, or whatever remainder is. It was just, I think it was a minimum of 20%. Some districts might have done more. All right, so this is what it's going to look like. Couple questions here. So the first one, addressing physical health and safety. The next one is meeting students' academic, social, emotional, and other needs. Again, the 20% set aside, then that portion that is exclusive of the set aside. Number 5, mental health supports for students and staff. Again, 20%, non-20%. And then operational continuity and other expenses, 20%, non-20%. Okay, you're going to be putting in dollar figures here. I will hit next. It is going to be angry at me because I didn't include anything in here, but I am going to ignore that it's angry at me and go on to the next one. And then SR3, it asks for, okay, so what percentage of remaining funds do you plan on spending on these things? That is really just make your best estimate. And then I think number 8, we're going to take out. We're almost done with this. And then it's which activities or interventions did the LEA implement to satisfy the requirements of SR3? That's just check boxes. And then there's a small narrative here. Please describe how the selected activities meet student subgroups, and you've got to answer that question. And I'll go on to the next, and it's going to get angry at me, and that's it. All right, so that's probably the most arduous of the surveys, because you got the 20% and the non-20%. But that's the SR3 data collection form in its entirety this year. The SR2 one is going to look the exact same. It's just not going to have that 20%, non-20% distinction. I do want to share the CROSS-ACT, and I will share that right now. The CROSS-ACT one. All right, again, I am going to be number 5007. I will be testing 8. I am not a consortium. So the CROSS-ACT one, again, this is across all of the acts, any expenditures, did any of the ESSER expenditures go on any of the above, right? So again, during FY22, it's check boxes, right? Promoting vaccination, mask use, etc. Home internet, if the answer is yes. Again, this is for FY22, so it's going to be interesting. Obviously, FY20, FY21, there was a lot of home internet, but we were all back in person, I think, pretty much exclusively in FY22. So, we'll see. There may be a bunch of no's here, but if yes, continue to be, providing home internet, then it'll pop up and it'll say, okay, well, what kind of home internet? We're going to say no to that though. Same thing. Did you allocate any portion of funds to directly to schools? Yes, we did. And this is how we did it. Did you use any ESSER activities during FY22 to seek engagement, re-engagement? Yes, here's what they are. If no, it hides. And then it asks about retaining personnel, and basically how many personnel you supported with ESSER funds. I'm going to hit next. It's going to get angry at me. And that's it for the cross-act. So again, I think this is totally doable. And as you saw, that's really mostly programmatic stuff. There's a little bit about staffing on the cross-act one, but really no finance numbers on the cross-act. I'm going to stop share there. I am going to go back to the PowerPoint slideshow. Okay, so we just did a walkthrough of those collection tools. Before I get into questions and answers, I'm sure you have lots. On Monday, the 20th, it is our goal to have all registrants, and maybe a few more, receive a link that takes you to that survey summary spreadsheet that's got all the links and everything that you need to do. We will have for you Microsoft Word versions of the surveys. We do know that a lot of you like to print out the Word survey, the Word document, or just have them on your computer so that you can look ahead, see what you need to fill out, maybe even fill it out, and then have it for you, and then put it into the survey. So we will have Microsoft Word versions of the surveys for you. We'll have this PowerPoint. We will have a recording of this webinar. The recording might take a little bit longer because we have to do a transcription for it, and it's a little bit more doing to get video on our website. It's much easier to put documents, but we will effort that and try to get that up as soon as possible. And we'll also have other helpful information. We did an FAQ last year. We'll update that FAQ this year. That link will probably take you to, let me pull it up here, the ESSER data collection website, which is not up to date yet. It was updated last spring, but it's part of the federal grant program's website. We will send you the direct link, but if you know where the federal grant program's website is, it's under the coronavirus relief programs, and it's right down here under ESSER data collection. And this is all the stuff from last year. We will update that with the new year of stuff that we're doing right now. All right, so I think we're at that point we have reached the Q&A. DESE, Michelle, hit me with questions and I will try to provide answers.
Okay, we have a few that came through during your presentation. The first one is, it says, we do the Title III grant as a consortium for several districts. This person's asking, how do they complete it? Being part of the consortium.
ESSER 3 or Title 3?
It says Title III, but I think they might have meant.
They might mean ESSER 3. Well, if they do mean Title 3, no worries, you don't have to do it. ESSER 3, the way we've set it up is the lead in the consortium is the only district that needs to respond to this. Now, if you are the lead and you don't know how the other districts in the consortium have spent, then reach out to me and we'll figure out a way to do it. It may be that each of the districts in the consortium needs to fill this out. We need to combine it somehow. But the way we have been reporting to the feds, at least in the past, with most of the consortia, are that it's really that lead district that is taking all of the information and distilling it and putting it into one survey.
Thank you. So we had two questions similar come through. They are asking, what does this mean for the SOA progress reports that were sent to us earlier this month?
Yeah, we've talked to the SOA team about that. These are very specific to the feds, and I wish that there were more overlap, but there isn't. And so we had to make it separate, unfortunately, just because of the feds very specific sort of requirements. They have slightly different wording. I will say that we are using as much data as we can to fill these out. So for instance, there's another survey that we populate just using EPIMS data. You don't have to give us EPIMS data again. We use the EPIMS data, we populate it, and we send it to the feds. So we try to use as much data as we can that you already give us, but unfortunately, this is separate from the SOA.
Great. So we have another question. It says, we are revising ESSER3 currently. Should that portion of the report reflect the original ESSER3 budget that was submitted in Ed Grants or the current plan?
Well, so if you're currently revising, remember, this is just looking at FY22. So spending that, occurred and ended last June 30th, right? So hopefully those books should be closed. I think in the vast majority of districts, those, that year is done. Those books are closed and they've moved on to FY23. This is only looking at FY22. So I think that's the best way to answer that question. We do know that, money can move around and journal entries happen and these kinds of things happen. That's why we're going to give you what the feds have and in terms of what they think is left, because they're not letting us go back and change things that were reported in previous fiscal years. We're just going to do the best we can for FY22.
And so this next question is referring to the ESSER3 survey. They said it was question 9, I guess, and that we showed them. It says, we break out interventions to satisfy the requirements of ESSER3 funds. This is focused on interventions and also includes programmatic aspects that weren't paid for with ESSER3. Is this correct?
Yeah, I mean, some of those things you're going to check, and some of those things you're not going to check, right? Some of the spreadsheets or some of the surveys, it'll be zeros across the board. You don't have to input the number 0, but we understand that ESSER3 funds, because they're so broad, could be used on all kinds of different things, and not all those boxes are going to be checked. And not all of those tables are going to have numbers in them. So yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay, we have one that just came through. It says, we didn't start ESSER3 funds until fiscal fiscal year 23, is there a place on the survey to indicate that no ESSER3 funds were used in fiscal year 22?
For that one, just send us an email. Say, we don't, we didn't spend ESSER3 funds in FY22. We'll start reporting on this next year. And that's totally fine. I think a lot of districts are in that boat. They might have spent a lot of ESSER2 funds focusing on first in, first out. That's not unique and not a problem whatsoever.
There aren't any other questions right now.
Okay. All right, excellent. Thank you very much for your attention on this kind of crazy weather day. We are going to be a couple of things before you go. We are going to, so as you saw that website, we will have the data collection website updated. You'll hear from us again on next week. Our goal is Monday. We're going to be doing this webinar again on Thursday. I know some people emailed and said that they couldn't make it to this one because of early release or whatever. So we will do this again on Thursday. I also want to, since I have a captive audience here, I want to put a plug in. We are running a new, or going to be implementing a new grants management system starting in FY24. This is a little off topic, but I know that you use Ed Grants. We are transitioning to a new grants management system, and look for announcements in the late spring. We're going to have a big conference that's going to introduce everyone to the new cloud-based grants management system. We're calling it GEMS. So just want to float that out there and plant that seed while I have you here. So I don't have anything else. If you have questions, you've got our contact information. All of the liaisons that you work with all the time can help you. And I just want to thank you very much for another year of doing this. I want to thank Michelle and DESE for helping me out today. And I hope everyone has a great afternoon and stays safe out there.